The O Cannabis Conference and Expo returns to Toronto June 1st through the 3rd, and there's still some good booth locations available. This exciting event is free for cannabis retailers and will feature Tommy Chong receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award at the O Cannabis Industry Awards. For more information about exhibiting or to register to attend, go to ocannabis.com. That's OCANNABIZ.com.
All right, welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we got Alex Rogers. He's the founder and CEO of the International Cannabis Business Conference. Alex, thanks for being on the Talking Hedge.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So for some people who haven't heard of the ICBC, can you kind of give them a little recap on what you guys do?
Yeah, we're kind of the first conference. There's a million cannabis conferences out there, and when we started this in about 2014, there weren't so many, but I still wanted to find a niche that wasn't there yet. And international cannabis wasn't really on anybody's radar.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously in America, I should say, and or in the United States, I should say. And I just thought that I had lived all over Europe, and I kind of consider myself a global soul, and so I had I'd always just had the druthers to help legalize in Europe, and so we started the International Cannabis Business Conference in Portland, Oregon, eventually San Francisco, eventually Vancouver, and eventually we got into Europe, into Berlin, and the Berlin ICBC became the biggest in Europe for B2B, and my personal fave. But basically what we do is we're a conference that brings people together. We curate a special experience. And, talk is cheap. A lot of people say that, but we just put a little more, I went to so many cannabis conferences when I was a ragtag activist back in the day, and like the old school Normal conference. Now, big up, shout out Normal, but some of those conferences were just a little bit, it was old school. You had a lot of criminals in the cannabis industry. It was just sociologically congruent, and I just thought we could do a better job and wouldn't have to come off as stoners. I'm a stoner, but I'm a magna cum laude graduate of political science also, but I am a full-fledged stoner, you know what I mean? And I just want people to know that stoners can do stuff too, and not only can we do it, but we can do it better. So ICBC is a great quality experience in terms of curating like a great networking experience, and of course a lot of awesome speakers. And then we have counterculture after parties afterwards, and it's just kind of the whole deal, kind of a cerebral academic day, and then at night we kind of let loose a little bit.
So I was up there at the Vancouver ICBC last year when the Canadian border was still open. So I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that I was listening to and some of the transgressions that's been happening post-pandemic. But before I get there, I kind of want to ask you about the industry in general, kind of with international. As you mentioned, you started it because you didn't see people doing that. I was working with the World Trade Center here locally in Tacoma, Washington on an export store, like an e-commerce international platform. And when talking to hemp and CBD farmers about getting their products online for the international market, they're still to this day very much reluctant because I don't know if it's matured yet. I don't know if they've understood the full vast capabilities of going international. What's your take on maybe the naivete of the market, or just how early it is? Or maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you think the market's doing?
Well, yeah. So because we do conferences in about 5-6 different countries. It really depends on what country you're in and who you're asking. So if you're asking the farmers in the United States or on the West Coast, are they down for going international? That might seem really crazy to them, like a big move, right? Almost slightly grandiose. And if they have a market here that's sustaining them, they don't necessarily need to think about it, right? So I know in California, a lot of people want to export it. They just talk THC, right? They're dying to, they can't wait. As for the CBD, the market's pretty strong here, but yet it is starting to happen in the United States, and people are feeling more comfortable with it. And if you go up to those same people that might have been a bit reticent, if you gave them an actual plan and said, hey, this is what we're gonna do, it's gonna go to Switzerland, and this is gonna, then they might be like, well, yeah, let's do it, because it's incumbent upon the person who's making a deal or whatever to make it as cogent and clear as possible of what's going to go down with this big step that they're taking. Now, when you talk about other countries, they are international. You go to Europe, and except for maybe Germany, everyone thinks internationally, right? And so there's a lot of different rules, and so we're regulated by state and feds, basically. Canada's kind of the same thing, but states with provinces are the analogy for the states. And then in Europe, they actually care what the United Nations says about weed. So when we first started doing conferences there, the Germans would come up to me like, oh, Alex, we want to import, but the UN will never let us do that. And I was like, the UN? What's that? Because as Americans, that's not on our radar, because previously we are the UN. We caused all the drug shit. Then we ironically opened it up. Therein lied a grand irony. And then now Europe is pushing the envelope. So you see some cases in Europe now where it's not necessarily okay, or the UN will twist it to say, well, it's okay under medical auspices, but it's not under rec, for example. But whatever it is, I find it fascinating that that's a real variable in consideration for folks doing business in Europe, of what the tenor and what the regulations of the UN are. And you also have the regulations now of the EU. So Germany's not just Germany anymore. France ain't just France. Switzerland's not even Switzerland quite anymore, even though they're not part of the EU. However, they are part of the Schengen Treaty, the border exchange treaty. So everyone has a different. Everybody has a different take. Every country's laws, then you have the UN laws, and then you have the EU laws that are kind of have supremacy over individual country laws, depending on a lot of things. So it's like the United States of Europe over there now, except it's not. I'm not a huge fan of the construct of the EU, because it's run by the European Commission, which is non-elected officials, and the European Parliament doesn't have legislative initiative. Most Europeans don't even know the stuff that I'm telling you right now. They just like our European Union, you know what I mean? And there's varying, on the streets, nobody's for the EU in Europe, because or at least the Eurozone, because it made prices go up. So I'm digressing here, but my point is that there's a lot of variables, and everything's international over in Europe. So you go there and everyone's like, oh yeah, the Switzerland, yeah, we're getting the CBD to the Spain, and then Macedonia, and then we're going up to London and then Denmark, and then every country has its respective thing going on. And then they have the other hierarchical rules they don't have to, but should, and kind of do sometimes follow from the UN and the European Commission. So they say implementation is 90% of the law, right? Mm-hmm. So even with all this regulated hierarchical construct, it still matters what's going on the ground, and you do see the envelope being pushed over there also. And CBD is a great example how it's been and being pushed right now.
Well, it's definitely interesting seeing, like a town in northern France and then Greenland both banning alcohol early on in the pandemic, and then promoting CBD. We're not really used to that. So now that it's become essential business, all of that stuff has changed. So kind of expanding on what you were just talking about, because there was 5 things that I wrote down when I was at the International Cannabis Business Conference in Vancouver, BC last year. And of the 5 things, it was regulations, mergers and acquisitions, international investment, international export, and strategic partnerships. So I'm wondering about, maybe a crystal ball prediction or things that you've seen and or heard that kind of lend credence to both international export and international investment in 2021.
Well, yeah, okay. So now herein lies the $64,000 question, because if you had asked me this question a year ago, I would have had a slightly different answer.
Mhm.
But ultimately, the answer is the same. It's going off. I couldn't even understate or overstate how important it is to, if you have a niche in the international cannabis market, be it through product or investment or partnership or whatever it is, these can be really, really, really important partnerships to cultivate right now, because it doesn't take a Rhodes Scholar to figure out that the cannabis thing is going only one direction. And in some ways, the pandemic is something that has actually possibly accelerated or accentuated this notion of cannabis commerce, right? So Europe's also very different in that they're not as, we think of Europe as very progressive and liberal, and of course they are in a lot of ways, but they're also very conservative. And when it comes to in like old school traditional ways, and when it comes to cannabis, Europe can be very conservative. So when the financial crisis happened here in America 12 years ago or whatever it was, 13 years ago, that was when we started legalizing weed, because the activists, we'd been doing it under the auspices of human rights, go figure, civil liberties, what a concept, up to the point where we had the recession, and then it was we're going to do this for, look how much money everyone can make, right? And your economy's fucked and your economy's fucked, but we're going to legalize and we're going to unfuck ourselves by legalizing weed. And we actually see, Colorado came on, and then a lot of other states, Washington, you guys right there, and boom, it just happened. I'm a little sad as an activist that we forgot about the humanitarian or civil liberty aspect of it, seemingly. But the same analogy is kind of true right now for Europe, that they have the pandemic in Europe, or the lockdowns, or whatever you want to call it or deem it as. And so this is and I don't like when people say, oh, this is an opportunity for a new this or that for the pandemic. The lockdowns, they suck, and they suck. However, reality is reality, realismus, and it's a huge opportunity now in Europe to push forward for recreation, because it's so easy to talk medical marijuana in Europe, but it's so hard to talk recreation. For example, in Germany, like 85%, 90%, some ridiculous number, are pro medical marijuana, right? But then it's like 35% rec. So the discrepancy between who's in favor of medical and rec is great. Now, I think that's going to change, and I think the whatever you want to call it is going to, the shitty situation we're in is going to accelerate the pro opinion for recreation. And I think it's going to be for some of the same reasons that it was accelerated in America 13 years ago. So before this, I would have had, my answer would have been like, it's on, it's going, it's gradual. And now I think it could be even quicker. It might not be. It might be. It's like hindered in some way. It's like 2 steps back, 3 steps forward type thing happening here. And when I talk to my colleagues in Europe, it's kind of like my colleagues here. Most people are doing pretty well in the cannabis industry under the lockdowns, comparatively speaking to some other industries. And the same is true in Europe. When you talk to people, they're like, it's going off and this and that. And now you're finally starting to see those mergers and acquisitions happen and there's been a couple major decisions recently in Europe that have really helped the market. You know, the UN actually or they say cannabis is not a Schedule 4 drug anymore, and that's huge. So they've kind of rescheduled it. And then the European Commission has said that that CBD is not a narcotic. And so and so these are huge decisions that have I think they might have come about whether the pandemic had happened or not, but these are examples of huge institutional decisions on a high institutional level that have been made that are opening up the market. So as for mergers and acquisitions and whatnot and partnerships, people are feeling a lot more comfortable coming into a market where they know it's still volatile as heck, don't get me wrong, but it's not that volatility has seemingly been a bit mitigated with these big institutional decisions.
You mentioned the United Nations, and so with the World Health Organization and United Nations kind of on board with now declassifying, maybe even in favor of the U.S. Rescheduling cannabis, wondering how that's going to change, especially with the FOMO that Mexico's legalization could have on the U.S. sandwiched between Canada and Mexico. And yet the importance of strategic partners in that scenario, because Starbucks didn't work in Australia, McDonald's didn't work in Iceland, and yet those are staples that you would think are plug and play anywhere. But it just highlights the importance of understanding the local culture and how to really break into a new culture with a new product or service, even though it works everywhere else. So how do you foresee that legalization happening and working its way internationally with those strategic partnerships?
Yeah, well, I know how I see legalization happening, and it happens a little bit, when you talk about understanding the respective locale. That's what I've learned by doing all these events around the world, is I get to see the cannabis market in all these different places where it's thriving, and you see some consistencies with and some constants with everything, but then you also see every respective area has their own nuances. And I'm not sure what you mean by how it helps with strategic partnerships, but I know that,
I guess maybe like an intermediary. So if you're in Spain, if you want to get into Spain from the US and you don't understand the culture, finding a strategic partnership that has an existing
right. Okay, I got it. Yeah. No, oh my God, that's crucial. And that's analogous to like the hippies in the suits in America, as we came on and we professionalized the cannabis industry. It's like a lot of suits would come in and be like, oh, well, I don't need the hippies because I'm gonna do this just like I would do any other business. And a lot of people failed because of that notion, and they realized that, well, you do need the hippies. And so the same is so true. I cannot say enough about how important it is, if you want to understand a market. In America, you need to get down with the culture a little bit. You got to understand cannabis culture a bit, at least. And of course, it's going to help. It makes sense to any real business person who's not totally hubristic and a jerk, is going to realize the value in understanding the culture of a product that you're marketing to. Even if you want to go mainstream or whatever. And that is so true. Like in Spain and Germany and all these places are so different. You go to Spain and you realize, oh, it's not really legal, but it is legal. And well, then you have this coffee shop scene, and then you have this medical scene that's not really happening, and then you have this CBD grower thing going, and then you have this medical growing thing that's allowed for export, and then you have the culture of just how to do business in Europe, in these countries. And if you come in like John Wayne and shit to Barcelona and start talking to cats like, hey, you know what I'm saying? If you don't sit down and have a fucking espresso with these cats and just chill for like 3 hours before you do anything, you're not gonna be successful. So there's the cannabis nuances of each respective market. There's the cultural nuances of each respective market. And yeah, I can't stress enough how important and fun it is. It's like, you don't want to come in there and John Wayne things out and just have everything come to you. I mean, if you're some total Don and you're used to that shit, fine. But otherwise, it's really great to go into a different culture and then understand, you know, oh, maybe vape pens won't work in Europe as well as they do here because everybody smokes with tobacco. There's like one of those grand easy examples of understanding a culture that's European culture, because nobody smokes pure weed in Europe hardly. They are to a little bit now. You can't. Are dabs ever going to be big in Europe? No. I mean, they'll be big. They'll have a niche, right? But will they be big like here? No, because people don't smoke weed like that in Europe. It's a very interesting cultural difference how we all smoke pure and they all smoke with tobacco. And
It was really weird explaining what the vase was in Amsterdam and that it was
they don't
a
want that.
bong and
They don't want that shit. They're like, "What? You smoke pure?" They think you're some drug addict or
he has
something.
no idea what a bong was. I had to explain it to him. I thought he was just trying to get free weed out of me, and I'm like, "Here, you can smoke. You don't have to play dumb." And he's like, "No,
Yeah,
really."
he's like, "Oh, so what is that? Oh,
Right.
I never tried."
He was legit though. He had no idea how to use it.
That's funny. Oh my god, that's a stare. Yeah. So
Another
I
thing
love
that
it.
there's a
I
lot
find
of
it all
things that kind of
fascinating.
came true with the event that I went to at the ICBC, including the mergers and acquisitions. We saw Tilray and Canopy having a gigantic merger. Anything else that you've seen that kind of would add to that trend with either Canadians coming down to the US or just the US capitulating together because they feel that they are forced to? What's going to happen with that this year or moving forward?
Well, I'm not totally sure. I mean, I think there are. Look, it's all about consolidation, right? Because people are gonna have to consolidate if they're going to survive. So there's gonna be no middle people. There's gonna be little mom and pops doing their thing, and then there's gonna be the big consolidators.
Is that an
So
analogy to Starbucks? There used to be mom and pop, Starbucks places like baristas, and then now it's like either you're at Starbucks or you have a little drive-through.
I mean, yeah, I don't think it's quite Bucky analogy because marijuana culture is strong. You know what I mean? It's like we know what we want. We know how we want it, and I guess I wouldn't compare us to coffee achievers. You know what I mean?
Mm. You guys still have infused coffee though, right? In Oregon?
Oh, we got all that shit.
Because we don't have infused coffee. I know I'm getting off
No,
track here, but I'm just making a point that if you have a ton of money and you want to throw it into Washington, give us some infused coffee because I'll drink it.
I can't. Why don't you have infused? You just happen to not have it, or it's not allowed.
We have K cups, but that's not coffee. So they got like Legal Soda, the brand that you probably have still in Portland and down the I-5 corridor. They still, I think, have infused coffee from time to time, whether it's cold brew or otherwise. They don't have grab and go coffee in this state anymore because it's too expensive.
Do what to manufacture? Or
If they can't get the milligrams to 10 to 15 cents per milligram, then the bottle, and because the retail stores up here will do a 3x on the price, and then it pushes it to $20 for a drink. It sits on the shelf and then doesn't end up working out. So they
yeah,
pulled all of that.
Well, maybe you might have to do 2x on that product. The Dutch have a saying, "Klein percentage maakt groot advantage." Small percentages make big advantages.
Yeah, that's the way it's going to have to be in the end. I was just talking to a friend earlier about waiting for $20 a pound because I was at the store getting some cones and tobacco's there, $18 and change for a pound in a bag. I'm like, that's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I mean, in Oregon, it's cheap as hell. Like our market is so awesome, bro.
You still
Like
got $30, $40 ounces down there.
hell yeah. I mean, yeah, you can actually go in and get some deal and get a zipper for 40 bones, bro. It's like it was 400 when in California in 1994.
Yeah, I remember.
I know it was debilitating.
So events, we still got this lockdown BS, not able to open up the Canadian border. Certain countries don't want people. How is the International Cannabis Business Conference looking to move forward? Is it this year? Is it next? When are we going to be able to get together and pass around a joint again, if ever?
Uh, um, man, I just, it's funny because so we're about to publicly announce our 221 events next week, and I'll announce them. I'll break news and announce them right now. They have not been publicly announced. So, and I'm really excited. Our next event. So I'll say that we're we spun off to we're doing B2B, our B2B conference, and we're also doing smaller global investment forums now. Uh, Financial events, investment events, partnership events, and our first event for 221 will be in Austin, Texas, at the Lakeway Resort and Spa, May 6th and 7th, and that's going to be a global investment forum. Our Berlin event will be July 7th through 9th, and that's the 7th, a one-day global investment forum, and the 8th and 9th of July will be the big B2B. And then I have a couple more, but that's all I'm going to announce now. But we got some other totally dope shit coming up too. And yeah, I mean, I figure we got to push back to normalcy, man. It's just, I called up, where am I going to do an event? I've always wanted to do an event in Austin. They're open to do events. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Austin to do the event. I rented like 3 times as much space for the people that'll be there. So we will be cognizant of not having to be crammed in like sardines anywhere. I don't think anybody wants that, pre-COVID too. You know what I'm saying? It's like at these conferences, it's nice to be at least cognizant of staying healthy, no matter what it is. But we've got it going on. We've got the hotel, the venue's amazing, and we're having VIP receptions and after parties, and a lot of it's going to be outdoors in Texas on these wraparound decks looking over Lake Travis. We're going forward, brother. And for Berlin, we're right now we're capped at 1,000. That could go up. But if we have 1,000-person event in Berlin, we'll be very happy. And the funny thing is in Berlin, it's the big 3-day event, and we've rented about 3 times as much space for 1,000 people for that also. But we're pushing forward, man. It's funny because everybody has an opinion on COVID and the lockdowns, and they certainly run the gamut. But when I call folks, I've been calling people the last 2-3 weeks, priming our core constituency, if you will, and everybody's super stoked, bro. Like even the most hardcore fearful people of COVID are still saying, I'm coming. You know what I mean? They have to come. It's like, they're just tired of being sedentary, and they want to interact with people. And to tell you the truth, businesses are suffering. When we get together again, we're going to be like, what? I mean, who knows what the possibilities are? And I think everybody's restructured to understand how to keep overhead low and how to work as efficiently as possible through all this. So I think when we do make partners, I think we kind of know, everybody knows what they want a little more, what they need. And when we see it, we'll latch onto it, and we'll go forward with it. So it's been heartening to see the reaction.
Well, I'm wondering if post pandemic, if it's going to be a hybrid now of in-person and online for certain people that just aren't ever going to be comfortable. You got Bloomberg and CNBC saying that travel will never go back to normal. The CEO of Airbnb was saying that. conveniently right after he went IPO.
Yeah, fuck them. They just want to. It's all fear porn. You know what I'm saying? Never go back to normal. What a stupid fucking thing to say. You know what I'm saying? Never go back to normal. Man, that they must think they're awful important to think to even know what normal was in the first place, and to think it could go someplace else or not go back. I mean, it's ridiculous, the shit that people say. We are going back to normal. In fact, you'll have a sense of normalcy at our conferences, and we'll make sure of it. And so it's incumbent upon each one of us to not succumb to authoritarianism. And that's what this is turning into, is authoritarianism. No matter which side you're on, it's just clear this can go bad. It's so similar to 911 to 9/11 to me. When after 9/11, the FISA courts expanded. You had Guantanamo. You had all the spying from the NSA. You had all this Homeland Security became a new agency, right? And I'm definitely digressing a little bit here, but it's the same shit. They just take control, they take power, and then it never regresses or goes back. They don't retract it. And that's the same thing for this. If we let them keep taking power, it's never gonna go back. And that's, I don't care how you feel. This is just normal sociology 101. So we're pushing forward, man. We're like, none of this, no, God, of course we're going to go back to normal. And if I have anything to say about it, or if my colleagues have anything to say about it, we are the normal. We create our world. They don't create our world. We create our world. And we have to remember that. And we have to be respectful for everyone's opinion. Everyone has different opinions about this. Safe. But you know what the cool thing is, Josh? If you're scared to come to one of these events, you don't have to come. What a concept.
For those that don't want to, I'm curious if technology like virtual reality hardware, like headsets, are going to be something of the future, and maybe near future, where you are there, therefore you're involved, even though you can't come. If you have like an immune compromisation situation, or you just aren't feeling safe, or you can't make it, will the event industry moving forward cater to or try to involve folks that aren't there physically with something like virtual reality?
Yeah, and we've already had that. And will that happen more? Yeah, there's no doubt that that'll happen more. And we're even going to do it for our Berlin event specifically, the big one. We'll offer a virtual. We did a virtual event in June. It was successful. I personally hated it. It was just like,
It's not the same. Yeah.
So bad. I'm a hands-on guy. I'm touchy feeling, right? It's like, oh God. So I decided I'll never do a just virtual event again. I mean, never say never, but I don't think I'll ever do a virtual. It just doesn't float my boat. That being said, we want to be considerate of people who want to be part of this network, but don't feel comfortable. If you are immune compromised, you got to be, going out anywhere, you got to be careful. If you are, or if you have multiple comorbidities, you have to be careful. There's no question about that. Therefore, for the smaller global investment forums, I will not offer a virtual ticket. I don't think they're very exclusive high-end events, and I really want to promote. You're going to have to come to the event if you want to be part of it. I don't see much that someone could get out of it. Also, if I thought there was real value in selling a virtual ticket for that, maybe I'd do it. But for Berlin B2B, when there's 1,000 of Europe's, God knows how many people on the app of Europe's finest, of this international multitude of cannabis players, then we will offer a ticket for the Berlin event. That will not be live, though. You're not going to be live watching the events live. We'll render that material 24 hours after it's done. You'll just be able to go into the networking, the app, right, and connect with all the attendees before, during, and after the event. And really that's where the value is anyway. So for me, it's smooth because I don't have to deal with the bullshit of all the tech and all the, oh my God, we're getting glitches and
Mm-hmm.
that's horrible. I hate that. I'm a true Luddite, right? Anyway. So, I mean, I have experts that do that stuff for me, but I don't understand it and I hate it. And, but with that being said, we're going to offer the ticket because if you want to come into our network and be with these thousand really amazing cannabis players, who are all high end, all paying $600 a ticket, then we'll have a virtual ticket. It's not going to be real cheap either. I don't want to incentivize people to not come, but I will have an option if you want to be part of it, that you can attend virtually through the app.
Is there anything, before we roll this up, is there anything that I left out or anything that you'd like to plug?
Nah, man, we said it all. Did we get you? We announced the events on it, and let me hit.
Where can people find you at if they're interested in attending this event, either in person or online? How can they reach you? Where can they find you at? What's some?
Yeah, they go to international CBC, international Charlie Bravo Charlie.com, and we're gonna have all our events announced. We'll have them up by no later than I think about just under 2 weeks. We might actually announce next week. So all the information is going to be there, and we're really accessible if you want to contact us. I mean, one thing I will say is that we don't have any big investment for us. I've had investors coming to me for this or that or whatever, and we're a family-run conference. So we're one of the few big conferences on the planet that's just family-run. We get to do what we want to do when we want to do it. That's one reason we're able to survive through all this, is because we can be lean and nimble whenever we need to be. So we're very accessible. If anybody wants to contact us, just hit us up on the website. We've got for the investment events, we've got pitch tables for people to exhibit and get them directly in front of investors. For the B2B, we've got a lot of great sponsors, exhibitorships. It will sell out. Berlin will sell out quickly. So if anyone's interested in the Berlin event, hit us up, and we're here to legalize cannabis, all and all drugs all over the world. Just things you do to yourself are not a crime, and we just have been pushing that I've been pushing that for 30 years now. Since I met my mentor for the cannabis from the cannabis, Jack Hare, the original activist. So that's all I want to say, man. We just want to legalize it. Everybody needs to be able to grow weed in their house, and all the business stuff is a wonderful byproduct of great public policy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll have some of those links in the description in the show notes as well. So
cool, dude.
I want to thank my guest, Alex Rogers. He's the CEO and founder of the International Cannabis Business Conference. Alex, thanks for being on the Talking Hedge.
Appreciate it, Josh. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out.
Hi, y'all. I'm Jo, host of Casually Baked, the podcast. If you're curious to explore the highly responsible side of cannabis, farming, and legalization, I'm here to help lighten the stigma and build your canna confidence. Download episodes now of Casually Baked, the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And journey with me through the evolving cannabis culture and discover how and why people like you are adding cannabis to their wellness toolkit. It's time to get casually baked.